Alright, thanks everybody for showing up tonight. Must apologize. We ran into a bit of a snafu right before the meetup was supposed to kick off at 6:30. Got a phone call from the guest and mentioned that they would not be able to make it due to an emergency. And rather than bug them about what that emergency was, we figured give them the benefit of the doubt. We all understand emergencies happen. And so we wish him everything well and make sure that everything's okay and hope that he'll be able to do this talk at a later date. So we understand it's a big effort for everyone to come out. So we really appreciate you guys all being here. Another full house. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for coming. Untitled Traffic on a Thursday. Yeah. So just a little bit of let's get things warmed up here. How many people traveled over 50 miles to be here tonight? Anyone? Ooh, nice. Okay, we got about 4 or 5 hands. Anybody travel from outside the state tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 people from outside the state. All right, anybody travel from outside the country? Yeah, raise your hand, Ricardo. Okay. That's what happens when you live right across the border here. So, border town, but it's good that we have somebody who also goes to the Tijuana Bitcoin meetup and participates. So, talk about an international Bitcoin meetup tonight, right? And Ethereum. Who here is here because they were on the Ethereum meetup group? Oh, good. Nice. Good set of hands. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. So, a couple of things. How many people here have a Airbitz Bitcoin wallet? Nice. About 40%, 50% of the people. Very good. How many people here have a Bitcoin wallet in general? I better see a lot more hands altogether. Okay. All right. A little bit more. And how many people actually own Bitcoin that are here tonight? How many people own Ethereum? Wow, almost the same amount of hands. People are divested. That's good. Playing it safe. Covering all your bases. Excellent. So first off, we want to let everyone know that we'll have about we have an open mic after the presentation, which will be a panel tonight of all these lovely gentlemen who've decided to help with our improv, and so William Swanson will actually be moderating the panel, and you guys may know him from working here at Airbitz and being the what will we call you, like chief engineer, architect, plumbing, head of plumbing for Airbitz. I like that. And then to his right is Eliran Zak, who formerly worked at Bitmain and Kolu, and recently just joined the Airbitz team as well. And to his right is Frankie Hu from WageCan. And if you haven't heard about what WageCan is, you're going to be very excited because it will, I'll let him tell you, because we'll give some suspense. And then John Ritano, who's the CTO of a company he lives here in San Diego, and it's called Koala. And I'll let him talk about what that new platform is. I think you'll be very interested to hear what they're working on. I know I am. And Paul Pui, the CEO of Airbitz, will be on this panel. So you got a lot of good brains on this panel tonight. So take advantage of it, especially during the Q&A, and we'll actually leave a good amount of time for that to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to dig in and pick these guys' brains. That's right. You can ask questions too. Also, there is a Bitcoin meetup donation code that you can go ahead and make a donation to. It's on the meetup page, but just in case you want to make that donation during the event, I'm going to pull that up so you guys can see that on the internet as well. You guys can donate from home too. So while that's coming up, let's see. We also wanted to talk about did I already mention that everyone who wants to at the end will have an opportunity to give a 60-second spiel about what they're working on or something that as it relates to the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency blockchain space. We just ask that you don't promote any multi-level marketing or similar type entities as deemed by the community, because they will let you know, trust me. As soon as you start talking, they're going to jump all over you. There's two conferences coming up within the next 2 months in California that I will be attending. One is in September in San Francisco called the Altcoin Funds Symposium, and it's talking about ICOs and actually hedge funds and managers trying to bring education to the market around what that is, what that means for that industry, and how they can become a part of it. So I'll be up in September 14th. It's a Thursday. There is a discount code for 10% off. The discount code in all caps is Crypto10, and again, that's the Altcoin Funds Symposium. And the second one is BlockCon, and the website for that is goblockcon.com. And it's in Santa Monica, October 10th and 11th. And there's a 30% discount code off of that one, and all caps, blockchain. So take advantage of that one. It's not that far. Plan to go up for the day, stay overnight in Santa Monica. It's beautiful. The first one is Altcoin Funds Symposium, ALT, coin funds, FUNDS, Symposium, and that one's in San Francisco. There's two versions of that ticket. There's a service provider ticket, which is more expensive than if you're a student, an investor, or a manager. So take advantage of the one that makes the most sense for if you're a business or if you're an individual. And without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get this panel kicked off and started so we can try to learn something tonight. And that's why we're all here. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. And remember, we'll meet and mingle afterwards, and we'll probably head down to Oyster Bar, which is right around the corner here on, I don't remember what it is. Just follow all of us. We'll all kind of mingle over together right after we clean up all the mess that we made. All right, thanks, everybody. And William?
All right. So just to get started, you guys want to tell me a little bit about yourselves? We'll start with Paul and work our way down.
Thanks everybody for coming. As Chris had mentioned, my name is Paul Poi. I'm CEO and co-founder of Airbits. And for those that are new to the meetup or to Bitcoin, we are a Bitcoin cryptocurrency wallet. I invite you guys to download it and put some Bitcoin on there and use it as one of your mobile wallets. So thanks a lot.
Hi, my name is John Raytano. I'm the CTO of Koala, which is a startup that is creating a stable value cryptocurrency. We are going to have a token sale soon. I can't exactly say when, but it'll be soon. And we've got a lot of really cool technology that we've built, and the underlying technology is Ethereum. We use the Ethereum code base as our starting place.
Hello everyone, I'm Frankie from WedgeCan. What WedgeCan solve is make spend Bitcoin more easier by using Bitcoin debit card. So our Bitcoin debit card can ship to more than 100 countries, including US. So please go to wedgecan.com and you can find it out. Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name is Eliran Zak. I'm from Israel. I formerly was the first employee in a company named Kolu, which developed Colored Coins protocol, if anyone heard about it. Then I worked for Bitmain, developed a mining pool for them, and now I'm here in San Diego.
All right, thanks everybody. So the big news today is that SegWit has activated. But what does that mean?
Well, I guess I'll kick off. I was very, very excited about SegWit. William was one of the first people to kind of present the details of the technology to me, and I couldn't wait for it. I was excited about both the bit of scalability, but also the change to the protocol that could expand Bitcoin. Admittedly, over the past several months, as I started to learn more and more about it, I realized that it, for me, isn't all that it was kind of marketed to be. It will give us a bump in scalability and amount of transactions we could incorporate, but it's a lot of technology to accomplish that. And one thing people forget, it's very well tested. And I give the developers who have worked on it a lot of credit because it's very hard code. They tested it very thoroughly. And one thing people forget is they tested the core node mining software that does SegWit. All of the wallets and the payment processors, all of that, such as our own company, all still have to develop code to support SegWit. So it activating does nothing until every single wallet or wallet that you transact with supports it. So that's one of the challenges, is that it activating doesn't instantly get us any improvement. We now have to actually build in support to all of the different infrastructure pieces, which is a huge undertaking in and of itself.
That's great. Well, one of the things that strikes me is that a lot of the sort of uncertainty of where things are going is now behind us. So I think that's generally good for people who are in the space. I do think it also underlines that these issues of governance, of how do we decide what changes we're going to make and do that in a orderly fashion, that's pretty important. And this was not an orderly fashion the way this was done. Let's hope we can figure out how to do that using a combination of tried and true principles of running things, and also using technology to make it easier to do that.
So I'm pretty excited about SegWit is that we can finally run a smart contract on top of Bitcoin by using like RSK or similar application. So after SegWit activated, there will be many kind of application can build on top of Bitcoin instead of Ethereum.
So basically, a few years ago in a hackathon, I developed a payment channel process. And back then, I remember it seemed like such a good idea. And because of SegWit today, we can take that idea to like the next level. And we can build lightning networks, which basically allow infinite amount of transaction between people. So basically, if everything, and I agree with Paul, it requires a lot of code, a lot of effort, a lot of second layers and all kind of stuff from a lot of companies and people. But I do believe that eventually we can achieve that. And what it will give us is basically almost an infinite scale for a certain amount of people. So instead of thinking how much transaction per second, the entire mindset will change into how many people can the network support. And those people, those users will be able to basically have infinite transaction, which in my mind is a lot easier to scale the amount of users than to scale transaction, because eventually you hit a certain amount of people and that's it. So super excited about it.
So it sounds like what we're saying is that today is the first day of lots of more hard work. But that's just in the Bitcoin space. There's not just Bitcoin. There's Ethereum, there's ICOs, there's all these altcoins and tokens and things. What's going on with that stuff? Like, why would we need more than Bitcoin?
Well, I think the entire scaling debate has kind of proven why we need more than Bitcoin, because you simply need other options for people to choose from, whether they're called Bitcoin blah or Ethereum or something else. And that's one of the reasons I really liked this entire space is, the fact that it promotes free market principles is that if you don't like the economic system, you can fork it yourself. Now, that still means you have to get people to buy into that new system, but at least you have the opportunity to do that. There's no option in this country for you to create your own Federal Reserve and issue your own paper money and say, hey, if you want, you can use mine, right? You'll just simply go to jail. So this is an opportunity where you can fork the current Federal Reserve of Bitcoin and change the issuance rules, change the way the money works, change its programmability, and if you get enough people to hop onto it, then it gains some traction. Maybe it's not still 100% more, but be able to compete and show what is possible versus just simply saying this is all I know, which is what we do with the current money that we have. So I think we do need the competition. I'm glad that there's different companies trying to do that. John here obviously is trying to build an entirely new ecosystem that's not on Bitcoin and a different type of chain. And so bring it on. Let's see what we can do.
Thank you. That's what we're trying to do. So you asked, why do you need something more than Bitcoin? And I guess first you should understand what what is Bitcoin, or what are the core features that are interesting about it? It's very cheap transactions, like usually. It's instantaneous, and it's permissionless. There's not a gatekeeper. You don't have to go to a bank or get some other monetary authority to approve your entrance into the ecosystem as either a consumer or as a merchant or anything else. And that's very powerful. So it also has some pretty good privacy features, although you have to do a little thinking to make sure that you keep your transactions private, but it has the opportunity for privacy that there because you don't have gatekeepers. So once you know what it has, that's a great advance, and then you could look at why is it not perfect? What could you do better? And that's what we spent a lot of time thinking about. And there's sort of two things, and they're very obvious things, so it's sort of hard, well, one thing that Bitcoin doesn't have right now is not everyone on the planet has it. That's not a feature of Bitcoin per se, but it's worth asking why that isn't the case. It hasn't grown as fast as, say, Facebook. Let's give one example, or WhatsApp grew. So why is that? What's stopping the adoption from really catapulting up? That's one thing to consider. And the other is we've heard a lot of feedback from people that they want a stability of value. They're really hungry for stability of value. Now, at the same time as we've heard that, there's plenty of people in this room who are also hungry for the complete opposite of that, including me. So there's this dual nature of a coin. And there was an article, a white paper by a guy named Sam's that's called Seigniorage. If you look up Sam's Seigniorage on Google, he talked about this tension. It's that on the one hand, you really want this thing that can become more widely recognized, and then people can buy into it, and then they can make money, and then they'll tell other people about it. And that actually is an important process. It's not just about greed. Those people end up advocating for it and getting this coin adopted and built into software and all kinds of other things. So it's not something that you can totally ignore. On the other hand, people really want to know that when they go to bed at night with enough money to pay their rent, when they wake up, they still have enough money to pay their rent. And increasing value is not always good from a merchant's point of view. It's very hard to do transactions when even if the coin in your account is going up, it's when other people are coming in to buy stuff for them not to know if they have enough currency, enough things of value that they could trade into this currency to buy the products that you're selling for, say, 1 Bitcoin. So stability is something that people really want, and that's a feature that's not intrinsically in Bitcoin. In fact, it's sort of intrinsically not in Bitcoin. And so that's something else that we propose to solve with our stable value cryptocurrency. So those are just two. There may be others that there are plenty of other features that people are working on. So I think it's really good to take advantage of what was it that caused Bitcoin to happen. It was someone thinking of a new idea and saying, hey, I think other people might be interested in that. Let me throw it out there in an open source platform and see if they do, and a lot of people did. So that's still continuing with all the other projects, including ours.
I think ICO is just a beginning of the entire world comes to tokenization. I think in the future, every person or every company should issue their own token. But in Japan, there's a platform they can make every single person to issue their own token, and the token is kind of like a credit. So I think it's just a beginning. There's lots of application. In the future world, I think people will use less dollars instead of using token, because every ownership or credit, even carbon credit, they can transit into the token, because it is kind of around the world. If you sell let's say carbon credit in a single country, you cannot trade outside the country, because just like stock exchange. So I think in the future there's a great possibility for this kind of environment protection or entity individual will begin issue their token, like just like ICO. Yeah, thanks.
I think mainly because we can. I mean, how hard it is today to fork something and build a new thing, and that's what's so cool about like an open source community. Like Paul said, you can't fork the Federal Reserve, but you can fork Bitcoin. But I do have to say something a bit controversial. I don't really think that like ICO the way they are today. I mean, I do think there's a lot of potential, first of all, so don't like cross me before I start it. But today I don't think it's there. I think it's a premature market full of promises that are not going to be fulfilled. Everybody's talking about the next big thing that will change the world. Currency-wise, I think Bitcoin, or not specifically Bitcoin, if there's a currency better than that, I'll love to hear it. But a single currency is a huge promise, and it's a good thing. I don't understand why we need, in order to pay for stuff, 10,000 different currencies, even though they're digital and interchangeable and everything. The entire point was to build like a unified monetary system globally, easily. For a lot of other cases, I get it. You can use smart contracts, but as far as I've seen, and I've been in this, like I said in my introduction, I was one of the original developers of ColoredCoin, which was I think one of the originals like smart contract protocols. Trust me, it wasn't sexy back then, so people never used it. Today it's super like the big trend, the next thing. They're still not sure what to do with it. I mean, most of the stuff I've seen is like, yeah, I'm gonna basically build like Augur. Sorry if anyone is like an Augur fan. But like prediction, it's like, I'm a Bitcoin developer. I can hardly understand what they want from me. It's like, I'm in prediction market for digital currencies and assets on top of the, I'll call my, I mean, I can't get it. I can't understand the reason why everything has to have their own token, their own special ecosystem. I mean, the entire vision was to have like, there's a lot of, I'm sorry that I'm ranting, but I mean, there's a few stuff that a currency should have. One of them is acceptability. And once we start dividing the entire like ecosystem, yeah, I'm only accepting Augur on Monday through Thursday, and then I'm accepting Ethereum. Again, missing the point. You can build complementary system that uses one backbone, one means of transferring value. That's what's cool. I mean, the reason why WhatsApp has caught on is because everyone has WhatsApp. I mean, that's the point of network effect, that everybody has a standard. And when the standard is actually open source, then it's not really like a centralized mandates standard. It's a standard that the community, the people decided. It's what's best for us, and not even in a democratic way, in an engineered, scientific, very like smart way. So again, I think the future will have like smart contracts and will have all this technology. For me personally, I don't see it happening, not until like people start actually understanding what the hell are we trying to achieve.
Yeah. So John, you're building an altcoin basically. What do you have to say?
Well, I agree with the sentiment, I guess, that you should have a pretty good reason to build a cryptocurrency, other than you just have some interesting feature that you want to experiment. If you're going to actually tell people that they should use this as a medium of exchange or a store of value. And so it is so Bitcoin's pretty good. So you got to be at least that good. Actually, you got to be significantly better because of the network effect, because of the adoption, the momentum that Bitcoin has. If you're just a little bit better than Bitcoin, you would be better off, I think. You will have a better payoff for your efforts if you then advocate for somehow building something complementary or getting a feature built into the core code of Bitcoin, which can be hard. Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies, I don't want to pick out Bitcoin, all cryptocurrencies have a kind of governance problem in that it isn't necessarily the case that the best idea gets implemented quickly and in an orderly fashion. That's a really hard problem. And the general problem in the world, because democracy is messy, but it's particularly bad in an economic system because it just leads to uncertainty and problems. So that we have not solved. We spent a lot of time thinking about voting and different ways of doing governance, and it's a hard problem. Other people have spent a lot of time thinking about it too. So, in the case of WhatsApp, the reason that Signal is now growing so quickly is because WhatsApp essentially doesn't have good governance. You might put it that way. It was bought by Facebook, and people essentially don't trust it to do a good job anymore, or at least even if they did completely trust Facebook. It's one centralized team, so it isn't necessarily going to implement the best ideas. Let's say if the Signal team came up with a great idea and said, "Hey, WhatsApp, when you want to implement this?" That would probably go nowhere. So
I completely agree with that, but I wanted to mention there is a difference between Bitcoin and WhatsApp, and I kind of said it because Bitcoin isn't controlled by I mean,
yeah,
I know
right.
Everyone is core, and core is that, but
no, it's not. It's not controlled in the sense of there's one company. No, I agree with that. The only similarity is there's different reasons that both of them have their governance problems, and one of them is extreme centralization, and the other one is decentralized to a large extent. But it's somehow that itself becomes kind of a problem because of the chaos.
Let me ask you a question about
Yeah.
that. So everyone seems to have and don't get me wrong, I said it before, if someone builds something better than Bitcoin,
Yes.
be my guest, everyone will benefit. But everyone has basically been trying to say, yeah, I can support a gazillion transaction, I can govern this project, I can do that and that and that. Once you get to the scale of Bitcoin, then prove that you can do it. I mean, it's easy to talk when you're a small team with developers. And even Ethereum, I'm sorry, currently running into shit tons of problems, technical problems. Vitalik talks about every super complicated CS problem that's been hunting us for years. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to Casper things. What the fuck is Casper? I mean, Sharding, Casper, POS. Come on, nothing has been tested. Everything is some pipe dream, and if it works, great, awesome. Who said it's going to work?
Yeah.
First, get to the scale where your entire blockchain is full, every block is completely full, everything is super high dense, everything is super to the max.
Yeah.
Stand that, continue to support everything, don't break. Then let's talk about maybe you're better, maybe you build it, and
that is
there's
a challenging problem. Yeah.
Well, the only thing is, in order to get to that scale, you got to pitch your product. You got to get people to use it. And the way you get people to use it, I hate to say it, is just good old-fashioned marketing and tell people how awesome it is. Because how is anyone going to know about it, especially when you're in the shadows of Bitcoin? And to kind of go back into, why are all these projects launching coins and tokens, and what's the value in them? And that was admittedly one of the first. I was woken up to the idea of, once again, this is kind of enabling people to enter a free market. And with any free market, you're going to have scams, you're going to have bad projects, you're going to have really bad decisions. And so I think a lot of bad decisions are being made, both on the investor side and on the entrepreneur side. But that's how we discover our balance point. That's when we discover what projects really can work. That's when we discover who are the people that are actually trying to build stuff with good intent. And then what are the tall tale signs of scams and poor ideas? Since we have had decades of pent up energy within the community of people that want to participate in companies and invest in them that haven't been able to, the opening up of ICOs in what feels like startups, even though they're not really investing in equity in a startup, what feels like an opportunity to invest, is showing how much pent up energy there is. And that's why tons of money is going into these projects, whether good or bad. But at least it shows that there is strong interest there. Now, how do we start to craft, not the regulation around that, but how do we start to craft infrastructure that helps us determine what are the good, what are the bad, who are the good intent, and what are the really just shitcoin projects? And once we have that, and hopefully we have that without government interference, but actual private entities and companies that can build the reputation systems to help us decide. If we can do that, then we've opened up the doors for anyone to invest in potentially the next Google and Facebook, as opposed to just the wealthy elite, which is really all that could participate in that stuff before. Or you could get options and work for one company and not be diversified at all into many, which is what they say you should do. So I was against it at first, but admittedly realizing that it's an opening up of the market, and with any opening up of a market, you're gonna get the good and the bad. Just like the internet had a tremendous amount of garbage when it first launched. everyone thought it was just a cesspool of technology. It was the worst place to be, until we finally kind of sorted out through the weeds, and we had the giant IPOs that just collapsed, and their 2001, 2002 stories, and then we weeded it out, and then we figured out what worked. And so I foresee the same thing happening. I foresee people losing money and some people making a lot of money, and then I see kind of the real diamond in the rough start to elevate to the top and shine, and the project that really did have good merit, helping out the world, and us as individuals being able to participate in that.
So I think like I agree with so currently the ICO I think is immature because they most of the company just want to bypass the regulation, just want to issue their shares, their securities. So I think in the future, maybe after the ICO bubble collapse, maybe so it will be like more stabilized by some ranking company can provide advice to like which one is good to invest and which one is a scam. So I think this environment will be mature maybe in a few years.
So we've talked about other coins besides Bitcoin, but now who's the real Bitcoin? We got Bitcoin with SegWit 2x, and we've got Bitcoin Cash now. What's going on? So there's the original Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin Cash, and then there's SegWit 2x, which is the New York agreement. So there's going to be 3 Bitcoins coming up here real soon. So which one's the real Bitcoin?
Before I start talking, like everyone understand what he's talking about? Anyone needs an explanation? No?
Quick explanation on SegWit 2x.
Okay, so basically Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Everyone knows that. Bitcoin Cash is a fork that's not increases the block size, but won't have SegWit. And SegWit X2 will have SegWit and increase block size. The problem is that define how you look at it and whose side you're on. That the current Bcash that we have has a replay attack protection, so you can transmit the same transaction on both networks. So basically, once it's forked, it's 2 different networks. Nobody claims to be like, this is Bitcoin, we're an altcoin Bitcoin Cash. The SegWit 2x team are not going to put that inside their code. So the same transaction will be able to replay it. So both of them will claim we're Bitcoin. If you catch anyone's like transaction on one chain, you can like transmit it, and you can maintain the chain.
Yeah, it is definitely, for the average person that's looking at Bitcoin, an area of significant confusion. To expand a bit on what Eliran was mentioning, we did go through a fork in Bitcoin, and what that fork effectively did was the same as forking and creating a completely different currency like Litecoin or Dogecoin. It did the same thing. It created a completely new currency with a different transaction format that was incompatible with Bitcoin, but the difference is it basically said, hey, if you owned any Bitcoin, we're going to give you some of this other coin at the same time. Right? Your balance carries over. But after that balance carrying over, all the transactions are separate. When you send the original Bitcoin, you're sending the original Bitcoin. When you send Bitcoin Cash, you're only sending Bitcoin Cash. So they completely split. And that's, in a way, what you'd call kind of a friendly fork. Balances don't mix up in between the two. The upcoming fork, in I believe about November, middle or end of November, is a fork where both sides fundamentally believe that they are Bitcoin. Because there's many different ways to define who is Bitcoin. This is probably at the heart of this debate, is what exactly is Bitcoin, because some people will say that it is the one that has the most hashing power. There's merit to that because that tends to be the network that has security, the hardest one to hack, because there's more mining power, there's more money involved in it, so it'd be harder to do a 51% attack in theory. Others say it's the one that didn't change the rules. Like, the rules didn't change. It stayed exactly the same, and so therefore, technically, that is Bitcoin. And both of these are arguable, but one has to ask, is it necessarily true one way or another? From my own personal take is neither of them necessarily have a stake in that merit. Why does changing the rule necessarily mean that you're no longer Bitcoin? If you look at protocols and technology in the past, they have changed. The internet has changed its protocol. It is scaled not simply by making the software on top of it more efficient, it's scaled by actually changing the protocol, the way it operates, and also changing the hardware underneath and things just going faster. So I am generally of the opinion that what defines it is the majority of people both using it, supporting it in mining hash power, and supporting it as an ecosystem. So to me, it's is frequently considered the economic majority, is what is generally defined for me.
UASF basically, like the user's time and stuff.
So UASF, for those that have heard of the term, is meant as a way of enacting change via an economic majority. What had been implemented prior to this most recent fork was an attempt at UASF, but it did not have the economic majority. It eventually had the mining majority because the mining majority decided to support SegWit 2x. And in the process of doing that, effectively supported SegWit, which effectively pushed forward this UASF protocol. And it's a bit, I think, out of the scope of this topic to understand, or this discussion to describe what UASF is if you don't already understand it. But to kind of, at the heart of the matter, how I feel strongly about it is the real term of economic majority is what are the wallets supporting, what are the exchanges supporting, what are the miners supporting as a whole, not did it change the rules. Because I think changing the rules is an okay thing to do if a majority of economics support it. So I'm fundamentally not opposed to changing the rules if it's in the benefit of Bitcoin. And things like SegWit are in the benefit of Bitcoin. Things like a block size increase are in the benefit of Bitcoin. So fundamentally, that I think can be defined. And if in this upcoming fork, come November, the economic majority decides that it's just the current rules, then that's Bitcoin. If the economic majority decides that it's SegWit 2x, then to me that's Bitcoin.
So, personally, I support SegWit, but I understand why Bitcoin Cash exists. So, I just give common people advice. Like, people just ask me, like, should I sell my Bitcoin Cash or should I sell my Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash? So, I just give the suggestion, like, keep equal amounts of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, because I don't want to predict, like, which will be the majority. Yeah.
Yeah, so one last thing. I just want to say, like, I'm going to contradict myself a few times now. I am for forking. Forking is not that bad. Forking should happen. I mean, it's just another thing that happens if we, like, it's something that if it can happen, then I want it to happen. I mean, I don't want, like, have loose ends, attacks that we never foreseen, stuff that everything that can happen should happen just in order to test the system. My problem with SegWit 2x is basically the blocking increase. I don't have a problem with changing the rules, okay? I have a problem when changing the rules are for rules that make kind of no sense. I mean, honestly, if anyone can answer me, what's the point of increasing the block? So you have a limited increase. Eventually, it's not a scalable solution. It's not something that you can literally count on. So, okay, we have like 2x now, 3x, 4x. When do we stop? I mean, we need to think about better solutions. That's not a reason to fork. If you have like a real solution and that requires forking, go ahead. But
so this goes into kind of the technical and economic debate on the block size, which we can go on hours on this entire topic. And I think I have gone almost an hour at another conference about this topic on a panel. But at the heart of how I feel about it being okay to increase a block size is simply because who should decide what the number is? Where did 1 come from? And it came from nowhere, but why should it be that number? And why can't it be more, or why can't it be less? And so in the same spirit of the free market, I fundamentally think that the free market should decide, because really it's an economic value. It's not a technical value, it's an economic value. It's one that says, I can afford this much space on a hard drive, or I can afford this much bandwidth on an internet connection. Well, the people that have decided that number are not the people that are incurring the cost. The people that are incurring the cost are the ones that should decide. And so therefore, I fundamentally think that that number should be able to float with their decision, because they're the ones that decide. And in the same sense, things like SegWit and Lightning Network to me are technologies that attempt to make the network more efficient. They're like compression tools, right? When we send video over the internet, we compress it. And every year, every few years, compression technology gets better. However, would we be watching 4K video on YouTube if all we did was improve compression technology and that's it? Probably not. But at the same time, would we be watching 4K YouTube video on YouTube if all we did was increase the speed of the internet and just crank it up? Probably not. We needed both, right? We've got to be more efficient, and we've just got to be able to fit more on the network. So determining on what that number is, I fundamentally think that should be in the decision of the people that are affected by it. So the miners, the nodes, let them effectively decide. And then second, let us hit that economic limit and concurrently try to make the network more efficient with technology like Lightning and SegWit. But I laugh at the people that state it can only be one or the other. Because to me, they're the people that say only compress and make MPEG 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Or they're the people that say, no, don't compress, only increase the internet speed. You're going to need both. So you can't stand in the extremes, because you're just going to be, once again, an extremist, and that's not how we advance.
So another issue that's come up recently has been some hacks on the Ethereum network. The Ethereum network, as far as we can tell, still works mathematically well, but there's bugs in the contracts. Can smart contracts be successful going forward when you have a $30 million, $50 million, $150 million bug bounty on every single piece of code you write? What do you think?
Well, there are people working on formal verification of smart contracts and also of Ethereum, the protocol itself. So that's a potentially solvable problem. People are working hard on that. That might not close off every possible hack, however, if history is any guide. So
the biggest hack so far in Ethereum is when Vitalik decides to change the rules, and then everybody loses money or some gain money because like some contracts breaks like backward compatibility.
Yeah.
So no, but I think the Ethereum from now I'm talking from full developer like point of view. The more complicated the code, the more bugs you're gonna have, and it doesn't matter how many tests, how many everything you have. And when we're talking about money, I guess look at the legal system, for example. Lawyers have been trying to draft papers for years that like completely loop-free and nothing gets by, but we still have courts. I mean, there's always something gonna like go wrong the more complicated what you want to build. Now, don't get me wrong, I wish you good luck and I wish everything will be perfect and bug-free. But reality is a bit more messy than that.
yeah, because when you have billions of dollars flowing through a payment system, you're bringing out the very, very best in a technical, not in a moral sense, but in a technical sense of attackers. And you're just getting them to be amazingly well organized and focused, and it's a tough problem. You were like becoming a super recruiter for the very, very best programmers in the world by having a payment system that's decentralized. And where there's no gatekeepers, it also effectively means there's not really much of an enforcement system that would otherwise deter these people.
So smart contract development is really, really hard. And I'll explain what makes it really hard. I used to work at a hardware company. We developed semiconductors and chips. We deployed them out. But I wrote software in that department. And when we went and deployed out, it was a graphics card company, NVIDIA. When we deployed our graphics card, if there was a bug in the hardware, we couldn't fix it. We basically had to somehow work around it in software, because software is what we could deploy out to the network. Smart contracts are effectively hardware engineering. Once it's out in the wild, you cannot patch it. You can't fix it. So you have to get it right. And the worst part is, unlike our semiconductor chips that rendered pretty images on the screen, this thing's holding money. And you can't change it. It's like putting an ATM machine out in the wild, and as soon as someone finds out a couple of keystrokes to hack it, you could be standing right next to them and you couldn't do anything about it. You just have to sit there and watch them take the money. So smart contracts are very hard. Now, what will make it easier? One of the biggest reasons why software has advanced is because we don't write everything from scratch. We use building blocks. Right now, the building blocks are still being written, but at the same time as the building blocks being written, we're building on top of the building blocks. So if the building blocks are unstable, so is everything that's getting built on top of it. So the hack that I think William is referring to was a multi-signature smart contract that allowed multiple people to hold money together and have governance rules by which they can spend it. That feels kind of like a building block. It's a fairly small unit of code. But once again, it's not very mature. It hasn't been deployed in the wild. So as we start to have really mature building blocks that have really stood the test of time that we can now build on top of, the more secure our software will become over time. But it takes time, right? This is a new thing we've never done before. Write decentralized software that cannot be edited, that has money in it for attackers to go after. But remember one thing that the free market is giving us is that it's high risk right now, but there's also high reward. So you can wait and sit on the sidelines and not take part and not try to develop and not put any money and invest in it. And when it is safe, it's also less of a return and less rewarding to be in it. So you get to decide what's your risk threshold. Yes, this is a very, very risky time to be writing or putting money into smart contracts. But that's also when it's fun.
So speaking about the Ethereum, I think the rollback is one of the greatest feature in Ethereum. I mean, I once talked with Chinese people, and I was just wondering why Ethereum is trending in China, because they say if you want something be the mainstream in China, you have to let Chinese government know they can control everything. So I think Ethereum rollback feature is the government like it. So yeah, but yes, I think security is the main reason why we don't issue our own token at the moment. So I think we should wait till Ethereum be more stable. Yeah. Or we are looking for alternative solution like RSK. Yeah.
And I know we're talking about the Ethereum hacks, but there's also a lot of hacks around the ICO ecosystems, websites that's been hacked and changed addresses, because it's the first time where literally people send gazillion tons of money into a number. So in the last, there's been a ICO called CoinDash, and now everybody thinks it's a scam, but they really got hacked and somebody stole $7 million, which was more than half of the ICO. So, and all he did was change the address on their website. So it goes into so much more levels than just securing the code.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're doing an ICO, you've got to consider that maybe you don't want it to be as automated as it theoretically could be. Some of the old-fashioned safeguards might be helpful when you have many millions of dollars on the line.
So as we're winding down here, what are your hopes for the future? In 10 years, 20 years, what do you see the world looking like? Where cryptocurrency stand? Is it going to be a better place? In what way?
I see my biggest hope is universal adoption of cryptocurrency. And so the way we like to put that, and to make it concrete for people, is just about everyone in this room has or could have, they choose a debit card, linked to a checking account or something equivalent. That's everyone in the world.
Layer. But on top of money is financial services. And remove all the benefit of a decentralized currency. So what excites me is not just a decentralized currency for me to send money from me to you, but the smart contracts that enable now a decentralized financial services on top of that, where now I can go to a contract to be able to purchase insurance and hedge against weather. Even if those are very, very difficult problems to solve, those are the super high risk smart contracts that are trying to be developed today. Those are what excite me, because now we can really complete the circle of the entire financial system, not just the money to send from one person to another, but now all the services. And then we eliminate the tallest towers in every major city in the world, and we just connect everyone from one.
Mission is to make spend Bitcoin more easier, because like we introduced the debit card in 2015, and at the time people barely know Bitcoin, and they are like speculate about Bitcoin. So we make this debit card to let people believe that they hold Bitcoin and they can spend it. Yeah. So speaking about the future, I think like I have been mentor for some startups, and they are keep asking me like, should I need a blockchain for insurance? Should I need a blockchain for blah blah blah? And normally I just told them you don't need a blockchain, just a database. Yeah. So in the future, maybe a decentralized currency, but that's I think that doesn't apply to most of the scenario. Like I think most of the use case in our life, we need centralized solutions. Yeah.
I kind of agree with a little bit of everything that everyone said. I mean, Paul, what's wrong with just changing the entire monetary system? It's not enough? I mean, I think it's a huge change. I mean, hopefully.
So if you change just the money, you have to ask yourself what's wrong with the current money. And what I came to realize is what's wrong with the current money isn't necessarily the money itself. And when it got corrupted, it was because it got corrupted by who held it and who gave you access to it. So really our money was based on gold before, which in and of itself is a pretty good money. It had transportation problems. It was inefficient. And so we needed centralized parties. But those centralized parties to hold it, transfer it, loan it, are what created the current monetary system we have today. And the exact same thing can happen for digital currency. If all we do, and what 10% of Bitcoin is held in Coinbase. So if we ended up with a world where our decentralized money is only held in centralized institutions for things like loaning or holding, then ask yourself what stops that industry from turning it into the next gold, where they say you have it, but in the end you don't. And in the end it gets inflated. And how much money do they really have? How much Bitcoin is really behind that account? That starts to really ask the question is, where is Bitcoin giving you value? Is it just because you say it's Bitcoin? Or is it because you actually hold it? And when I came to that realization that it's, oh my God, we actually hold it. We've never been able to do that before. We've never been able to hold digital value. We've always needed someone else. And it's because we needed someone else that money could effectively be corrupted. So the ability to hold it is at its root. Now, if we're going to need financial services on top of that, we need to be able to use financial services that allow us to hold the value in the midst of that service. So I think it is a major step to be able to at least have the monetary system. But if we don't have the services on top of it, I feel like we will eventually just kind of rot back into where we were. Now that's a huge long-term prediction, but why not support and encourage and not shit on the projects that are trying to give us that extra monetary system that actually is peer-to-peer. So while I do think it's super ambitious and it's hard and it's very risky and there's going to be scams, I want to hear these projects and these people out and give them the support, especially if I at minimum, the thing that I try to sense in every project in the space is I try to get my spidey sense around their intent. Do they at least have a good intent? Because yes, most of them will fail, just like most startups will fail, but do they at least honestly want to try? If I don't sense that, then spidey sense go off, and I'm like, I'm not supporting this project because they just want the money and they want to run. But I do want to see the future where we not just decentralize the money, but also the services on top.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, and I will give my answer. Like I said before, I do think that the see it grow. Don't get me wrong. I do want to see finally real use cases that we can use in our real lives. I do want to see services that deliver on what they're promised and actually perform. And I do believe that in 10, 20 years, if we're looking that long, it will happen. And just by necessity, because currently, again, I think people, I can't remember who mentioned it, but you here in the States, everything is amazing. Everyone has a credit, debit, like 30 credit cards, infinity, like apps, all kind of, but also in Israel, so in Israel it's kind of the same, but our neighbors in Israel don't have banks, don't have credit cards. Like most of the world doesn't have it. And it's so much easier to like set up like station, have Wi-Fi surrounding you, mobile network, and then you have Bitcoin. And so much easier. And I see the necessity like wins, basically.
So that's my last question. I'd like to take some questions from the audience. So does anybody have any questions?
Do you think that, I know a lot of projects are open source, do you think that open source in nature is part of what's causing the low barrier to entry with a lot of these ICOs? And do you think that there's any other solution than open source?
Actually, open source is creating the low barrier to entry for all of technology. It's not just ICOs and cryptocurrency. I mean, look at the barrier to entry for like the medical field and drugs. Huge barrier to entry because everyone's basically closed up, right? They're keeping all their secrets to themselves. So as a developer, you go on YouTube, watch a few videos, get on GitHub, and you've got the tools at your disposal. So yes, it is creating the low barrier to entry, no doubt about it. I'm not sure how else to expand on that, but I think it's just generally true of any ecosystem and industry that is trying to make something that was very, very closed and inaccessible more open. And to not too much promote a project that I have my eye on and I'm advising, but the Matrix project, I think Scott's over here, they're trying to do, in essence, trying to create an open ecosystem for 3D modeling. So stuff that was normally very closed, people would keep it to themselves and sell it to people. Instead of, they're building what feels like a GitHub, but for 3D models. So I think that in general is true for any ecosystem. And if other industries, whatever that industry is, can find a way to be able to open up the assets and the work that other people have done, I think that industry will see huge advancements. The challenge is it's counter to what we think today. Like today we think, hold it to myself, keep it private so I can sell it. And while that's maybe beneficial for one company, it's definitely more detrimental to the general advancement of that industry. So one of the nice things about crypto is that while you're open source, if you can't sell the source code, the thing that makes you sticky and competitive is an ecosystem. And that's what you have with crypto is you have an ecosystem. And if you look at the biggest companies in the world, the closed nature of their technology isn't really what gives them the competitive advantage. It's the ecosystem around it. So Google has an ecosystem with their products. Facebook obviously has a huge ecosystem. If Facebook open sourced every line of code that they have, do you think that they would have a competitor? Probably not, because they wouldn't have the users. In the same sense, the stickiness of the cryptocurrency space allows it to be open source because you launch a coin or a token or blockchain, and if you get people that adopt it, just because the code is open doesn't mean you have competitors.
Yeah, it's true that it's a low barrier to entry, and the reason that people are starting all these, I agree, I think with everyone here that the vast majority of these ICOs and similar projects don't have any real substance to them, and the reason, I guess it shouldn't ask so much why do people do it, but why do people invest in them? And that's because they've seen a few well-known examples of people making 100, 1,000 times their investment. And so there's this they're lowering their fear to take advantage of their greed, essentially. So if you're just thinking of it from an investment point of view, yeah, you might, if you invested in, this is what must be playing out in people's minds, and I've seen this in a few people myself. They're saying, hey, I'm just going to invest in every ICO that comes my way, because most of them actually will do okay in the short term even. But even if they don't, one of them will hit really big. So this is very similar to the dot-com bubble. If you, the difference is that it's even more attractive to people. I'm not going to say it's better, because in the dot-com bubble, if you were to get shares, there was usually a lockup period, so you weren't really sure you could get out quick. Whereas with an ICO, you're getting a token and you can see it go up in value 5 times and get out. So it's encouraging the kind of the craziest kind of behavior of an investment mania, and I think we are in an investment mania, and that will end. We just don't exactly know when, but that will end, and what will happen is people will get more sophisticated, and they'll develop these instincts that you're kind of alluding to. People that of us who've been talking about it tonight, we will all collectively develop instincts of what makes a good project. Like you were saying, that you look at people's intent, you might look at other metrics. There's a lot of pressure right now. There's a lot of social pressure, even for a project that has great intent and great substance to it, which is how we feel about our project. Investors are coming to us and just trying to pressure us to do things like other projects. So there's sort of people get sort of caught up into, even good people who don't start off as scam artists sort of get pushed in this direction if they're not careful, to kind of take advantage of people, or take advantage of the mania. And I don't think it'll last forever. And I think if you just look carefully, you can if you can get to understand the substance of the project and get people on your team who can help you do that. If it's too technical, you can probably get a better idea of what's real and what's just total fluff.
Yeah, I agree. Open source not only lower the barrier, but the entire source code, entire project is your credit. So if you don't open your source code, you don't have any credit, and people in the community have no way to audit your source code, and they don't even know if your project is legit or works. Yeah.
Anyway, we got some back here? Okay. Let's go. One, 2, 3.
Hi. I was wondering about ASIC Boost and Bitmain miners and what effect SegWit or SegWit 2x has on that.
Really? Okay, everything I'm gonna say doesn't come from the fact that I've worked there, or the fact that I know something anyone else doesn't. Honestly, I know basically what's been covered and what's been public, as it is a public blockchain and we can see what's going on. But to specify your question, technically on the surface, Bitcoin Cash keeps ASIC boost, so you can do covered ASIC boost on everyone knows what ASIC boost is. It's basically, the simplest explanation, it's an optimization method for mining, which makes your mining more efficient. And it's protected by a patent, which makes that's the problem basically, that only one Bitmain holds the patent, and they're the only one who can use it. So, and in the current situation of the blockchain, you can do that, you can use the patent. So as far as I know, SegWit basically destroys it. You can't do it anymore. SegWit 2x also, and because it has SegWit, and Bcash doesn't, which you can still, if you have a miner that can do ASIC boost, you can still do it. And all the Bitmain miners has the hardware and software inside already. It's proven, it's open source, and you can go and check it out.
Yeah, hi. So tokens have been criticized rightfully for a while now. What are some really good examples that you know of tokens?
Okay, I just answered, but I want to answer again. It's like asking somebody who hunts ghosts if he has a good example of seeing a ghost. I don't think I've ever seen any good token. Maybe you can call Ethereum a good token, but then again, it's a good system. It's not like, I don't think it has any value as like a monetary system or whatever. So you can expand the definition of it. It's a good technical achievement, but other than that, which I really can't see any value for any, because my main problem, that if you're building a project on Ethereum, why not use Ethereum?
So probably I think it is the first ICO, public ICO on the Ethereum blockchain was the Augur project, and it spoke here, was it just last month, I believe? And having analyzed that project more closely than other projects, I do fundamentally think that they have a good use case for a token. So their token helps provide security into their network, because it is something that, because they control, their contract can effectively allow people to vote based on their monetary stake. By owning these tokens and staking the tokens, they're allowed to vote on what actually occurred. And what actually occurred and how people vote on that gives them a reward in those tokens as well. So can you do it without a token? I think much more challenging. You can't do what's called controlling the dials of the game theory. And that's really, in essence, what it is. So when game developers create games, and a lot of people say, hey, all these massively multi-online player games should have Bitcoin in it or some other decentralized currency. Well, one of the challenges of that is everything in the game is money. A shield, a box, the gold, whatnot, they're all money. And the game developers are able to tweak the mechanics of the game by virtue of hitting the dials of how much things are issued and what's available. Now, they're able to do that live and change it on the fly. With a smart contract, you can't. You set the rules once and then you're kind of done. But the point is, you're allowed to set those rules. Those rules aren't predetermined for you. And that's one of the things that having a token allows you to do, is to be able to create the game mechanics. It's not a game per se, but every game theory-based project has game mechanics. And you have far more control over that and the incentive structure. And that can lend to the security of the ecosystem. So I do think that they have a fundamentally good use case for it, but many admittedly don't. It's just another thing to sell, to make money, and maybe require inside of your contract when you don't necessarily need to, because it's just a payment method. So.
Yeah. So the distinction you're making is between a token, which is used as a medium of exchange or a payment mechanism, and what you could just call a utility token that has some use, some specific use that there's something that you want to have a finite supply of in some context. Like, for example, maybe you have a communication system that has VPNs, and you want to sort of let people pay for or bid up the how much they pay for that, the use of the VPN system, or something else. So there are some systems out there that are using tokens, and those are not payment systems, so they don't need to. They could be on a blockchain, but they don't need to sort of pretend to be a thing that you would use to pay people for goods and services.
So basically, from what I figure out, so the answers were, you basically get someone who can control the money, so you can decide if it's good or not, but it gives the developer basically a way to control the money, which I thought that's the entire point of avoiding it. And the second use case is raising money. Other than that, I can honestly argue that I can't see any good use other than raising money and controlling your own supply, which both of them, you can argue it's good or bad as much as you want. I think they're not a good enough reason to have a token. Technical reasons, the only reason you don't need a token, because like if you don't have a token, then other people who didn't buy your product can use it. Oh my God, other people can use your product? I think, who wants a Facebook token, a WhatsApp token? Okay, so in those cases, you're the product, which is also not a very good situation. But I don't want a limited supply product. It's a technology. It's supposed to have a service. It's a service. I want to use it. I can pay for it in Bitcoin. I can pay for it in dollars, in credit cards. Why does every service have to have its own? You have it here. Every store gives you their own credit card. I don't think it's a great system, but then you can use the credit card in other places. With the token you offer, you can't, which is even worse. So I only see it as a limiting factor, the token itself. I mean, if you want to develop a system using Ethereum, which allows you a lot more, use Ethereum. And if you can't achieve it, then I'm sorry, you're probably doing something wrong, because that's the entire point of Ethereum being Turing complete. So again, you said you can control your own supply and you can raise money. Other than that,
Question? All right, question?
So I see the appeal of a cryptocurrency and kind of all these amazing applications it promises. But realistically, I've only seen it used for like 2.1 uses. Speculation, the black market, and like a tiny bit of novelty uses. Well, I've been gambling in the black market in the sense of money transfers that you don't want the government blocking. Right, and then there's a tiny bit of novelty stuff like Bitcoin credit cards and kind of all the ICOs where no one really uses their projects, but maybe someone does a test. Am I missing something, or are there like current large scale uses of cryptocurrency for kind of something that isn't just speculation or gambling? Or
that's right. That's right. If you notice that is it like 150 billion now is the market cap for all cryptocurrencies or something close to that, and money you can quantify how much money there is. The most conservative number you could come up with would be 28 trillion. So there's effectively almost no cryptocurrency compared to traditional money, and that means there's hardly any adoption. So that's where we are right now, and one of the reasons is this is super new. I mean, so come on, give Bitcoin a break. It's pretty darn new. We had several thousand years of traditional money systems, but it is a good question. Why hasn't the adoption rate been faster? What's stopping it? That's the kind of the leading question that we think about a lot. But it's a good question, and it is a question that people from the outside, it's kind of obvious, and people who are in the cryptocurrency world sometimes just forget about. It's the most important question.
So I'm not sure how much visibility people have of kind of the global economic system, but obviously here it's not needed. So money flows to where it's most needed, and there are definitely parts of the world where it is needed. Here in this country, it's needed in the black markets. That's what you're going to see, and that's where a lot of the transaction volume that people are aware of goes. But in other countries, you might call it speculation. For them, holding their own currency is speculation. It's just downward speculation. So there's a kind of a gray area or fine line between speculation and store of value. And for I think a lot of people, it's a store of value because their other options are terrible. There's countries where people buy cars as a store of value because that's better than holding their own government currency, even though for us, that's the worst thing you could do. So think of it from the viewpoint of where is it needed, where is there most friction in money, and where is money giving people the most problem? And that's where you're going to find Bitcoin being used. Now the question being is, as the current financial system starts to implement more and more friction, where do we start drawing the line? Where is it where one person would say, yeah, the financial system worked for me today, and then now tomorrow it's creating friction that Bitcoin is better at? And it starts with the more challenging, rural, low access to financial services locations, and it will slowly start to creep into people like us. But yes, sitting here today, it doesn't seem like it's needed or used. But the fact that blocks are full, we're getting hundreds of thousands of transactions a day, it's constantly backlogged, means that there is need. People are using it. It's just not the people next to you. But we'll get there.
How many people raise their hand on when you would ask the question about who owns Ethereum here just 6, 7, 8 months ago? You know what I mean? It's like the adoption starting to come in are like, oh, I'm getting it, and they're getting it quicker. So like a lot of people that were involved early, it's taken years to get up to a certain speed, and now everyone gets to hop into superhighway because of the ones who led kind of the industry.
And there's nothing wrong with speculation because one of the friction points that John was mentioning is stability. Right? To make a currency usable, it needs to have some level of stability. Well, the speculators help that because they're driving more market cap to that currency, making it harder to move the value. if barely anyone owns it, you can move it really easily. If a lot of people own it and hold it, then the harder it is to move and the more stable it gets. So I give credit to the speculators, even if they're not using it, they're making it more usable.
All right. So this question mainly is geared towards what Paul said about what he thought of the future of Bitcoin. But for everyone on the panel can answer as well what they think of this. But you mentioned how you thought about the sense of decentralization in the monetary level and how other services built on top of that should also be decentralized. Otherwise, it kind of leads to this illusion of decentralization when there's really centralized controls built on top. My question is, what reassures you or brings you confidence that the miners, as actors in the Bitcoin network and the like, won't evolve into an oligarchy or effectively remove the sense of decentralization?
Same as we had talked about. And what gives me confidence is that if we really, as an economic majority, don't like it, we can fork it. And that's something you can't do with the current monetary system and the current financial services system. So we have a choice. So choice is what gives me confidence.
I actually had almost the same question. It was just going to be, over the next 5 years, do you think mining in Bitcoin will get more or less decentralized, and why?
Well, I lived in the belly of the beast, and I saw like how it basically keeps on growing and growing and growing and becoming a centralized like power. But I completely agree with Paul. So what? So they'll take control, so we'll build something better. We'll fork it, we'll evolve. I can't guarantee that in like 10 years, Bitcoin won't be completely in control of miners. It can happen, but then it means that we need to find something better. We need to fork it, we need to solve it. There's nothing wrong with attacks, and attacks happen. It's part of life. Our job is to find the perfect system.
So it looks like we have time for one more quick question, and then we got to be done.
We got one in the front here. All right, last one.
Okay, yeah, just switching gears a little bit. I wondered what you guys think about the valid other uses for blockchain, such as you know, Steam and DTube and social networking and other totally different uses that don't have much to do with cryptocurrency.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in that. And I think you were mentioning that a lot of people are saying, oh, I got to put this on a blockchain. And sometimes, our response is, well, why? Why don't you use MySQL for that? Blockchain, and so that I guess the answer is a blockchain is a distributed database. It has certain features. It is originally built to transfer value, but it is sort of a write-only database. It's something that you might want to consider where you really need to have a trustless system where you don't have trust. It's not a good idea to trust a single party, so you want sort of a consensus on some subject other than who owns what money. So that might be a social network, for example. A lot of people don't want to use WhatsApp because they think, hey, what's happening with that information? Maybe if it were stored in an encrypted way, in some clever way. It is encrypted, yeah, but there's a question mark on a lot of people's minds, right? So if you took out the central party, if you have a situation where you want to not have a central party and you really, really need to have decentralized information, even though it's not payment related, like let's say health records, encrypted health records, you can't trust any particular government. We in this country. Opinions vary. Some people totally don't trust our government, but we trust our government a lot more than in a lot of other countries, where the default assumption of almost everyone. I spent 5 years. No, I know our trust level in this country has dropped recently. In Mexico, though, we're not nearly as lacking in trust of our government as people in Mexico. In my experience, I've spent a lot of time living there, and the default assumption of just about every reasonable person, whether well educated or not, is that they're all thieves. They're all cheating us, and that's kind of a recent development in the United States where that's become a common opinion. So if you're in a place where you can't trust your government, whether that's a reasonable belief or not, or you can't trust all of the parties in a centralized system, let's say you're trading you're trading commodities with each other, but you don't trust any particular party there, then that's a good use of blockchain.
So I think like if you judge a system whether you want to use blockchain or not, is all about trust. Like if you trust the insurance company, you don't need an insurance blockchain. And like I've been in Africa and I've been in East Europe. Like I met Ukrainian people and they say like their currency inflation rate is around like 10 times a year. So if you live in a country that you cannot trust your government, they need a decentralized system. They need a consensus. So I think some people have asked the question before, like in U.S. Bitcoin used in the stock market or some illegal activities. But in some, that's the first world country problem. But in the third world country, people trust Bitcoin. Like I've been in Africa before Bitcoin, they just keep dollars. They don't keep their own currencies. So I think that's the main reason that the Bitcoin adoption rate getting higher and higher.
So I agree with what's been said, that basically when you need to trust the system, my main issue is that it's hard to find a real need for a trusted system other than value. Because let's say once you tie it up to the real world, then it kind of loses meaning. You have like somebody who can fake the real world that whatever you sell your house on the blockchain, somebody will just destroy your house. I mean, once you so it's hard to find really good. I mean, I've been in this ecosystem for 6 years, worked on exact projects that try to find use cases for what you just asked, and we couldn't. Honestly, like Colu, basically, I have to say something. Colu, the company I worked for that developed Colored Coin, they tried to build community coins on top of which sounds quite makes sense, right? Community coins on top of the blockchain. They switched to SQL. Sorry, not a very good not a very hopeful answer.
All right, so that's all the questions we have. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Chris to moderate the last section where we give our announcements.
All right, thanks everybody. Round of applause for our panel. This was very much an impromptu situation for this evening. So we hope we did our best that we could do with short notice. And what a great group of guys up here. So a lot of good knowledge that was shared with us tonight. So I do want to thank Andres Mego, who's here. He helped with all of the facts. Thank you. Nice to have some help around here. All right. So 6th and J, after we're done here tonight, is the bar, and that's where we're going to head to. So just follow us down there after. So we'll take the next, 10 to 15 minutes, and anybody who has an announcement, we'll just let them go ahead and we'll start passing mics around, and we'll get people to go ahead and they can do their announcements from where they're standing. Anybody want to start off?
Hey, Derek. Hi. So I have something I'm real excited about. Last meetup here, I mentioned I had hoped to get I built a news blog website called ontheblockchain.net, which I've been working on for a while and hoping to finish before the last meetup, and I'm excited to say now that it is now up and running. You can now go to really excited about that.
Anybody else? More announcements? Front here. Here we go. Hey, Tim.
How you doing? I'm Tim Haitian, and Russia Ignatova hates me. I just wanted to point out I'm considered the number one expert in the world I published an article with Jamie Redmond this week in Bitcoin.com, and feel free to check that out. There's going to be one or possibly two other parts, and I'm going to turn this case around, and he's going to be end up being the defendant, and the plaintiff will be the SEC because I have documents linking him to the money laundering and wire fraud for the company. But that said, the court case, the 77 counts of defamation and obstruction of business, etc., isn't something to joke about. And so check that thing out. And at the end, there's a signature wallet address. Who's interested in donating towards that case? Any money that's not used for it will be used to hosting CoinFest myself, which is a decentralized global event, usually around April. We teach Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency education, give away all kinds of cryptocurrencies around the world. I have my Bitcoin wheel in Sierra Leone and Ghana and Seoul, Korea, whatever. Bitcoin 101 talk or whatever. We'll spend that and give away a bunch of money to news. I wanted to point out something that was cool. So anyway, they're hosting the wallet. I'm not a signatory on it, and it's a multi-sig wallet. But if anyone wants to check this out, this is hand carved in Sierra Leone from some of our Bitcoin friends there. And newafricaradio.net is something that myself and some team have worked on. And in order to kind of unite the Bitcoiners and the cryptocurrency enthusiasts and blockchain enthusiasts from Africa to start getting into communication and form more of a bigger global network. And now we're able to kind of work with them and stuff like that. So thanks for the floor. Appreciate it.
Tim, did you want to announce the other thing that you were on?
Oh, sorry. Also, we are running a network of Bitcoin. Blockchain BTM is our network, and we're working on getting some machines down here. We have 4. We should have 6 soon, and this has been pushing for it. We want to get one downtown here in San Diego soon. My name's Sean. I run the Orange County therapy. We're actually having a meetup next Thursday. So anybody, it's kind of a drive. I know we're driving down this way. We hold it at 7 o'clock. Sometimes it goes till 10. Food and drinks. And actually, Ryan, who is going to speak tonight, is scheduled to speak. It'll be okay. We have a number of guest speakers. We'll also do webinars. Just want to encourage everybody to come up.